conditions. Joining us now, one of the authors, Daniel Morris, BNP Paribas Asset Management Senior Investment Strategist, and Mark Chandler still with us.
Continuing to cover the surprise resignation of RBI Governor Urjit Patel, joining us for some thoughts on the phone line, former RBI Deputy Governor Rakesh Mohan. Dr. Mohan, thanks for taking our call. Your thoughts, Dr. Mohan, an unfortunate day.
Well, I think that you put it well as an unfortunate day, that I'm deeply saddened and shocked that things have come to such a pass that Dr. Patel has resigned. This is the first resignation, I think, in 60 years. The last one was indeed Mr. Benegal Ramarao in the late 50s, because the Reserve Bank, since its founding in 1935, has had a very, very proud history of stability at the top, and the institution as a whole. And the institution does have great respect both within the country as well as internationally. So I'm deeply saddened by this turn of events. I do hope that steps are taken now to stabilize the situation and to restore the credibility that the central bank must have in the country.
Dr. Mohan, now, it's a very short statement from the governor. It's come from him. It's not come from the government. There is no word of the reason except that it's personal reasons. But it's come after a very acrimonious fight between the government and the governor. So I don't think anyone will, sort of set aside all that has happened in the last 1 month and say this is purely personal reasons.
Yeah. No, again, I have obviously no information. I do hope that there is no health issue with Dr. Patel. Obviously, one wishes him the best. And so, as of now, one has no information, as you are saying, in terms of the specific reasons why he has tendered his resignation. If indeed it is not due to real personal reasons, there must have been enough pressing reasons for him to take this ultimate step. To have enough differences which are not being resolved to have to do this. But, of course, one has no information in this regard.
Dr. Mohan, we had discussed earlier some of the issues out in the open which were issues of contention, and one of the toughest ones was the economic capital framework. On that, actually, the board agreed to set up a committee. So one thought that on that most contentious issue, at least some sort of middle ground has been found. Do you think any of the other issues were extreme enough for a governor to step down on?
Well, at this point, one really just doesn't have any information. The board is supposed to meet on the 14th this week. So one doesn't know what has been going on behind the scenes in preparation for this board meeting, either from this, from the board of directors, from the Reserve Bank. So one just has no information. So it's very difficult to comment on what has brought this on.
Let me ask you, Dr. Mohan, so this has now been announced or just been put out on the RBI statement. We don't have any word from the government except, cursory statements on their Twitter accounts wishing Dr. Patel well. Is it important to announce a new governor or an interim arrangement before the markets open tomorrow, sir?
Well, the way the Reserve Bank is structured, there's always, at any given time, a pecking order among the deputy governors, essentially dependent on the date of their being appointed as deputy governors. So as I'm not sure who is the most senior most, but automatically the senior most deputy governor assumes charge in such a situation, if and when it arises. Or whenever the governor is away from headquarters, it is the senior most deputy governor who is in charge at any given time. So that would happen automatically in the Reserve Bank. Now, imagine that the government has to be deliberate about the choice of the new governor, because it will have to restore confidence in the country, in the central bank, in the functioning of the Reserve of the central bank, that is the Reserve Bank, and in the joint functioning of the government and the Reserve Bank. So I would imagine that the government will take its time to appoint someone, unless, of course, they already have someone in mind.
And of course, the RBI is, as an institution, is fully capable, sir, of managing volatility in currency, etc. It would be important to send some sort of confidence signal, perhaps by heavy intervention, should the currency, weaken sharply in the morning tomorrow.
Well, the staff of the Reserve Bank is extremely capable, right from the top down the line. So I'm pretty sure that they will be able to manage the situation, whatever arises in the hours and days or weeks to come. I don't think I have any issue with that.
Dr. Mohan,
so they would have to, of course, demonstrate that.
Dr. Mohan, you're in the United States. Can you help us understand how people overseas, investors, people who watch India, saw this whole sort of fracas between the RBI and the government, and how this will be viewed? Will this be viewed as an attack on the central bank, a politicization of the central bank? I note that it's coming just a few months before a general election.
As of now, it really is very difficult to speculate on that. It kind of depends on the actions that the government takes. I would imagine that some statements will come in the near future on what the government is going to do about the situation. So, yes, obviously, there have been concerns expressed all around in terms of the differences that have been going on for the last couple of months. But as some people have commented, that so far there hadn't been great market reactions. So I think it will depend on what the government says and how the Reserve Bank acts the next few days or next few hours even. But I would imagine that, as I said earlier, that given the capabilities of the Reserve Bank management and staff, that its functioning would continue in a responsible fashion. So I think that the larger reactions will depend on what kind of communications are put out both by the government and the Reserve Bank.
All right, Dr. Mohan, I have two last questions. One is, slightly nearer term, and the other one is long term. So my question, one of the issues that was supposed to be discussed at the board meeting this week is this whole governance structure of the RBI. So I think after the last board meeting, there was an impression that the central board is becoming far more empowered. And this board meeting, there was a governance structure reform that was to be discussed where more committees would be formed to the best of our understanding. How did you see that?
Again, I don't really have good information on this. The one comment that I will make is that the Reserve Bank governance structure is more like the Bank of England, obviously for obvious reasons, because it was founded during the British times. And most other central banks have a somewhat different governance structure in the sense that, say, for example, the Federal Reserve, the board essentially consists of the equivalent of the governor and deputy governors. Here, of course, they're called the chairman of the Federal Reserves and governors. So there are no external board members in the United States. So the full governance is with the chairman and the other board members who are called the governors. Similarly, in the European Central Bank, the ECB, the full governance is with the president of the ECB and the other governors of the Central Board, plus the Monetary Policy Committee consists of the governors of all the member countries in the ECB. So that's kind of the more normal governance structure of central banks. In the case of the Bank of England, it does have a court of directors, which is similar to the Reserve Bank board. The tradition, of course, in the Reserve Bank has been that the governance is essentially done by the governor and deputy governor, but with the oversight of the central board. The central board, to my knowledge, has never been directly active in operational issues of the Reserve Bank. And I think that it's not really practical for the central board to be active in that sense. So I do hope that ways and means are found to continue the kind of governance structure that has existed quite successfully in the Reserve Bank the last since its founding, and I do hope that ways and means are found to do that.
Okay. Dr. Mohan, last question. This is not an immediate issue, I know, but there was a time when we used to debate whether governors need fixed 5-year terms. I asked that because now we have had Dr. Raghuram Rajan, who did 3 years and stepped down. We've had Urjit Patel, who has stepped down even before 3 years. While it may not avoid a situation like this, but this tenure of a governor is another important issue to talk about, and from the point of view of continuity of policies.
Well, yeah, in general, almost all reserve banks, or almost all central banks, the tenure of the governor is at least 5 years, in some places 6 years, in some places 7 years. So one does need a longer tenure of the governor than 3 years. I've said that in the past because central banks need continuity. One of the reasons why central bank governors ought to have longer terms is so that they are more insulated from the politics of the day. So yes, I would agree that the Reserve Bank governor ought to get a longer term. Having said that, it is important also to understand that it's not it's not easy for a governor to function well or the central bank to function well if there are extreme differences with the government. So that even if the governor does have a longer term, it's difficult for the government to function if there are extreme differences with the government, and you can have a situation that has arisen today where the governor resigns because there are extreme differences. Of course, as of now, we don't know if that was the reason why Dr. Patel resigned and whether indeed some personal reasons why he's put in his papers.
All right, Dr. Mohan, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts, quick thoughts as we continue to get reactions. I believe joining us on the phone line is Mr. P. Chidambaram, former finance minister. Mr. Chidambaram, your thoughts on this resignation of Urjit Patel, sir?
Not surprised at all. I expected it on November 19. Dr. Patel may have given the benefit of doubt to government, may have thought that government will retrace its steps. But I knew all along that government will not. Government's intention is to convert RBI into a board-managed company. And the person standing in the way are Dr. Patel and his deputy, Dr. Acharya. Well, I think government made it clear and was preparing the agenda for the next meeting. Dr. Patel must have got the message loud and clear. Why go through another humiliating meeting? So resign. I expected this in November. It's happened in December.
Mr. Chidambaram, through your tenure, you would have faced tough decisions and negotiations with the Reserve Bank of India. But as you point out, this was not about prompt corrective action or the February 12th circular. But the bigger story is how they're trying to change the governance and perhaps the reserves issue, although on that some sort of middle ground had been found via the setting up of a committee.
No middle ground has been found. All of you have been tamed by this government, so you're not willing to look beyond this government's words. Just shed fear and look through what this government has been doing. Interviews, articles, sponsored articles have all pointed in the direction that there's nothing wrong in transferring the reserves of the RBI to the government, and that RBI has excess reserves. The government's intention is, one, to convert RBI into a board-managed company, and two, immediately to grab the reserves so that it can meet its fiscal deficit for the current year and spend its way in an election year.
Mr. Chidambaram, that's exactly the point. We are heading into an election. Even if those who are willing to give the government the benefit of the doubt and say this is not political, there's no way to avoid that you're going into an election and some of the issues on the agenda put out by the government were purely political, like SME credit flow. I think the RBI had very clearly pointed out that there was no shortage in credit flow to the economy growing at 15% above nominal GDP growth or to the SMEs. So this has to be seen in the context of the upcoming election too.
We can discuss the substantive issues later. The point is, what is the government's intention? In my view, the government's intention are not honorable. The government's intention is not to strengthen the independence of the central bank. The government's intention is to capture, and it's not possible to capture, overawe the RBI. That's exactly what they have done. They've overawed the RBI. The governor has quit. The next appointment of governor will reveal the true agenda of the government. So let's wait to see who the next governor will be.
Mr. Chidambaram, last word for you on how the economy is going to take this, or first off, how the financial markets are going to take this tomorrow morning. Like you said, perhaps the choice of the next governor will be all important, and also how quickly they act, whether there's an interim arrangement or just a new governor announcement.
I can't predict what the market will. I can't predict how the market will react tomorrow. I can only react to myself. I think market players in private conversation will tell you what they think about the way this government is handling institutions in this country. No one would have thought that the RBI would be in the line of fire. It's sad. It's shameful. But we'll have to bear it until there is another government which will come and repair and restore the credibility of the RBI. Okay, thank you. Good
All
night.
right, Mr. Chidambaram, thank you so much for speaking to us. That's former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram saying this is out and out a politicization of the Reserve Bank of India, and also a trying attempt to change the governance structure of the RBI. Dr. Rakesh Mohan, who spoke to us earlier, also actually said that the RBI's governance structure has worked well over time. It's not clear why the government feels the need to try and break it. We are, of course, assuming that that was one of the key issues on the agenda. But of course, there were many others. Dr. Patel, in his resignation, has not cited any one instance or any one reason for actually having resigned. Urjit Patel, RBI governor, has resigned. That's a letter put out earlier today. Thanks so much for watching Bloomberg Quint. We'll keep bringing you coverage on this. Go to BloombergQuint.com. We've got you the details of the story, the perspective, and also the likely market reaction when we open tomorrow.